Welcome to Common Ground, conversations exploring the stories and perspectives of people building the UK-India corridor. My name is Lakshmi Kaul, and I'm bringing you this UK-India series for Global Order. The UK and India enter a new chapter in their relationship as the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, the CETA, comes into force. It's a landmark moment that promises to unlock new opportunities for trade, investment, and innovation between our two countries. But agreements on paper only become meaningful when businesses, institutions, and people turn them into real partnerships. As the UK and India deepen their relationship, regional leadership, entrepreneurship, and collaboration are becoming more important than ever. Joining me today is someone who has been at the heart of that journey. She is the director of the Northern Powerhouse Business and Policy Forum, founder of the Yorkshire Asian Business Association, ISS Freeport's Director of Strategic Partnerships, and chair of the Unity Enterprise. She received the Order of the British Empire in 2023 for her contributions to international trade, and in 2024 was awarded with an honorary fellowship at Leeds Trinity University. It is my pleasure to welcome Sharon Jandu OBE to Common Ground. Hi, Sharon. It's wonderful to have you with us.
Lakshmi, thank you for inviting me.
Sharon, when I was looking through your career, what struck me most wasn't just the different roles that you've held, but how interconnected they all are, from business associations and universities to housing, international trade, free ports to community. What's your story?
People, compassion, service. Sometimes when I reflect and I go back to my career journey, when you're young, your primary objective is you need to make money. So I threw myself into my career, bank of mum and dad. And then it's a bit like a Bollywood film. You wake up and they're not there. The story started there. I really threw myself into work, threw myself into education. And I was very fortunate. Hard work paid off. I had a very successful and a rewarding corporate career. And that's when I realized I was an entrepreneur. My roles within the corporate sector were very entrepreneurial, which I loved. The common golden thread I realized was SME. I very quickly became somebody who really understood the small business sector. So I started off in PR with the Institute of Financial Accountants, with the accountants for small businesses. And when I left them, which was 14 years later, I was the commercial director, head of marketing for the Institute of Financial Accountants. So when I started, they had less than 10,000 members, and then, tripled their membership when I left, and then got headhunted to work for Santander. And again, it was on an SME program to really accelerate the growth of small businesses. And that was the first time I got introduced to the Asian business community, as well as working on a project breakthrough for SMEs and creating the pillars of growth for an SME. I was asked to launch the National Asian Business Association. And at the time I thought, well, why do the Asian business community in the UK need anything different? Why can't they be the same member of a chamber or CBI or FSB or anything like that? And that's when I realized that actually there are challenges for the Asian business community, and they don't have the same access. They have certain mindsets. They don't have certain privileges. So I really got behind National Asian Business Association, which was back in 2013 at Santander. And that's when I realized, because I'm a Yorkshire girl, I call it the Punjab of the UK. I then created something called the Yorkshire Asian Business Association to represent the diaspora in the Yorkshire region. And actually, at the same time I launched YABA and NABA, the National Asian Business Association, I got headhunted to work for Microsoft. And again, for the very same reason, Microsoft actually wanted to have a proposition for SMEs, but in the north. So the fit was just really good. They really want to sell their software and connect with the business community in the north of England.
Congratulations also for the OBE. It's one of the highest recognitions that have been attributed through your work in international trade. But awards also represent so much of that personal journey. So when you look back today, what do you think made the transition from domestic to extending to international trade?
Thank you for congratulating me for the OBE. At the time, it's quite surreal, but you don't really realise the power of the award. I will recommend to anybody that if they do have the opportunity to receive an award or to get recognition, take it. Because people who meet me think, oh gosh, she's very loud and out there. But actually, I'm quite shy, and I feel a little bit embarrassed talking about myself because I just do things. But it's really important that we tell our stories. It's really important that that recognition is there, because role models are very important for the next generations. And it's only when you get older do you realise that actually we do have a responsibility for our future generations to ensure that they get the right support, the right capability, and the hand up that I received. So my OBE isn't for me, it's actually for all those people that headhunted me or believed in me or gave me that opportunity. So for me, a lot of it sits around that responsibility. When I left Microsoft, I did an MBA because I had a small charity which I set up, and that was to rehabilitate young offenders. It was something I was very passionate about. I'm also a magistrate. I've been a magistrate now for nearly 20 years. That's my put back into community. And I could really see what was happening in the UK in terms of, the real disadvantaged communities not having an opportunity and things that I took for granted. And I'll give you an example, Lakshmi. When I went to university, I think I was 19 or 20, they gave us a grant. In fact, they told us that we were the, 10% of the country, patted us on the back, and we felt like we were the eagles of the world. We felt so good. And now, when I look at young people and I see the challenges that they have, there's no grant, there's no money, there's no support. And when somebody else is sort of like underwriting your costs when you're an entrepreneur, it's okay. But actually, when you don't have that safety net, it's a completely different kettle of fish. The UK, especially around business and policy, it wasn't really going in the direction where I thought it could do to really support those people that are disadvantaged or didn't have that social capital and those opportunities that I had when I was younger. So I suppose for me, it was really looking at how could I use the knowledge that I have to help bridge that gap. I started to notice, particularly and I went to Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, my first interaction with India and fascination with India and South India. It's funny, isn't it? I was born in the UK and I thought all Indians are like me. Till I went to South India, I got the shock of my life. I thought, oh God, different language, they look different. They eat different food. So I fell in love even more with India, with that diversity, that richness, that culture, and that's when I realized that, my God, this country is on a massive growth trajectory. And I started to see very quickly the investment that the Indian government were making in their people. If you look at the young people, they're engineers, they're medics, they're mathematicians. And that's when I really cottoned on that, my God, the UK really should be thinking about India in a very serious way. And that's when I started my sort of relationship with India and just sort of chipping away slowly to now with the FTA and people really realizing that India is becoming a superpower and me feeling even more proud. Great, I was right.
India has a majority of young population, and that's the social capital that's now going to the whole world and working, building businesses, creating jobs. When people talk about UK-India relationship, invariably UK becomes almost equivalent to London. But you've consistently championed the regional Britain. Many Indian companies currently still think about London. Tell them, what are they missing by overlooking regions like Yorkshire?
You're absolutely right, Lakshmi. So I am a Yorkshire girl, born and bred. And when I started my career, I used to travel down to London. So I spent 30 years going to London. So the IFA was based in the south. Santander headquarters was in London. Microsoft, Reading, and then they had their offices in Victoria and Paddington. But I refused to move down to London. So I'd go down on a Monday, come back on a Friday, because my heart is in the north of England, is in Leeds. I am a champion of the north. But actually seeing London and how it prospers and seeing the amount of investment that goes into London and seeing the social capital available in London, and I'm seeing that how the north misses out or gets scraps or isn't part of that agenda. So consistently, I've always championed Yorkshire. So that's one of the reasons why, I was one of the founders of the Yorkshire Asian Business Association. But then when I started going to India and I looked at the size, I thought, oh my God, Yorkshire, the Kushvini is nothing. Cameron and Osborne, they, sort of like coined the Northern Powerhouse. But actually, originally, it was the Northern Asian Powerhouse. The Asian community is smashing it in the UK, by the way. The Indians, the Asians, they changed the whole sort of like business world. And, before them coming in the 60s, the shops used to be closed at half day on a Wednesday, nothing on a Sunday, 9 till 5. We made it 24 hours, entrepreneurial and really buzzy. So that sort of entrepreneurialism, it is there. So I changed Northern Powerhouse, an Asian powerhouse, to Northern Powerhouse Ethnic Minority and a Business and Policy Forum. Because again, I realised very quickly that actually just having a business organisation and being on the receiving end of policy wasn't enough. You need to be in the room. You need to have a policy directive. Your voice needs to be heard. So I've been a champion of that. If I can send a message back to the different universities and get the kids co-creating, collaborating, I think it's a win for everybody.
India's been doing really well, and everybody can see that. Of course, there are challenges, and the young populations are also in some ways similar because ambition, aspiration comes from hunger, like you said. You've been supporting the SMEs, and we often hear with the FTA conversations now becoming more concentrated around what specific opportunities are coming. We hear headlines about £1 billion investments in multinational corporations. Where do the small and medium-sized businesses fit into this whole UK-India story?
Yeah. So big business has been doing trade with India for years, for 200, 300 years plus, and they don't need any support. And they don't need an FTA. This FTA is for the small business sector. In the UK, we have just under 6 million SMEs. India has 74 million plus. And the hunger and the appetite for Indian businesses to co-create and collaborate with the UK is second to none. The challenge is the mindset of the non-Asian. I'm also a director with the Federation of Small Businesses, and I work very closely with some of the chambers here as well. And I sit on some of the business boards, and I chair an enterprise centre. The challenge is the non-Asian SMEs that just cannot get their head around the opportunity for India. For some of them, I also look at the perception of India, that actually people who haven't been have a certain view that perhaps was pre-independence or some of the dramas that came out. And I'm just shocked that some people still view and think that way. And what I do is I say to them, I say, well, have you been? I think that's the problem really for the SMEs. It's really trying to get them to understand that India is in a different place. The other thing as well is the scale. I think some of the non-Asian SMEs cannot get their head around the scale of India. It's huge. I've just come back from Hyderabad, and I've never been to Hyderabad before. And I was shocked, in terms of the advancement, the biosciences, the investment, the co-creation between the government, SMEs and academia. And in my head, I thought, you know what, in 5 years' time, India doesn't need anybody. So actually, the time is now for the UK, because after that, they'll say, Acha, it's okay, we don't really need you now. But they're calling out now, take it now. So I am putting a lot of effort. I am going with the mayors in October. I am trying to encourage their policymakers who, some of them have never even been to India. And I'm thinking, you're taking the mayors in October and you've never even been to India. And it worries me a little bit because in a business, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to do your due diligence. You've got to have experiential learning. So those kind of things really do worry me because actually this FTA is for SMEs. All the doors are open for an SME to take full advantage and to get that competitive and make loads of money and to do really well.
From your experience of leading delegations, and of course, you've been doing this for some time, what is the typical mistake that an SME from the UK will make while looking at market entry in India?
The key thing is perception. Like with anything, you have to do your due diligence. You have to do your research. It's a bit like when you run any enterprise, any business, whether it's a startup or whatever, you've got to have a plan. You can't just turn up and expect things to happen. The other thing is some of our non-Asian people that go, they still have a colonial view. But the thing is, because I've championed the Asian business community in Yorkshire and in the north of England, I'm used to people having certain biases because they've never had exposure to Asian communities. So common mistakes are just landing there and thinking things will happen. Common mistakes are not doing, your research and development. Common mistakes are, like with anything else, any new project, just going without any preparation. Like some of the mayors are going, you're thinking, you're going in October, what for? Do your preparation. You're not going to go there and launch an empty box. What are your MOUs? Who are you going to do partnerships with? Do a skills mapping exercise, these kind of things.
And I suppose that's where your role becomes even more critical. You understand India, you understand the UK, you understand the sentiment, you know what they're thinking, what they're seeing, what they're not seeing. Equally, education's become a big bridge builder now, and it's become a very important part of the CETA as well. So as someone who's obviously, on her third degree, but someone who's been so closely connected with universities, you've got that unique perspective on the same as well. Do you think we're preparing students, whether in the UK or India, for a genuinely global economy, or are we slowly becoming more localized?
I think we've got to do both. I think we do need to, think global. And that's where having that sort of vision and having those sort of like ideas in terms of, where is the economy going? For the past 10 years, there's been no stability in the economy. We've had one crisis after another. But actually having resilience and having an understanding of where the markets are going is something that we can do together, particularly if you're going with India that's actually determined to succeed. Because what's fascinating about India is that it's not cutting any corners. They are talking about, right, okay, what do we need? How can you get boots on the ground? How are you going to employ people? What do you need to make this factory happen? That's really, really important. But what's also important is actually the world is a big global village. Localization is very important. Custom made is very important. Creating a world where localization and regional voices, cultural differences are respected and admired. And we don't want a place where everybody's the same, but then also understanding that as a team, as a global power together, how do we make the world so it co-creates? How do we make it a better place for everybody? People just want their own space. How do we allow that to happen?
You live in the north of England and you've talked about perception of India, especially where you live. And it's not always positive and it's driven by many factors, as you listed out. Has it been difficult for you to therefore fly the Indian flag where you live?
Winning trust, hearts and minds, creating a place where people feel they can say anything they like without being judged. My friendship circle, my colleagues and my peers, and the people that I learn from, I'm constantly pushing myself to places where I'm out of my comfort zone. I think we need to create a section of change makers, and you can't make change unless you're going to go places where you feel uncomfortable and actually be prepared to be challenged as well. I mean, I was born here and people sometimes ask me, and I've got a broad Yorkshire accent. Where do you come from? I'm thinking, oh God, am I still going to have to keep telling people? And it's because of the colour of my skin, and that again is a little bit disheartening, championing diversity and inclusion in the positive sense, whereas sometimes it's being captured in the wrong hands and used in a negative way. But there's good and bad in everything. What we need to do is focus on the good things and embrace that. But the biggest driver for India is the scale of the opportunity. There's going to be more millionaires and billionaires coming out of India. Why wouldn't you want a piece of that? And those people want to work with you. It's a great agenda to push. Lakshmi.
As a woman, you've built your career, you've built your influence. What advice would you give to young women? What would you say to them?
I think you have to be true to yourself. If you look at some of the big, powerful role model women that go before us, they've got this sort of iron lady kind of image, and people feel that you need to be ruthless. You always have to be brilliant every time. You just be you. You have to find out what is it that is important to you. What are the key drivers for you? My key driver is compassion. My key driver is aspiration. And I really want to support communities and people that don't have that opportunity. Just create your own life how you want to live it and make your own mistakes and learn from your own mistakes and always push yourself. Be a better version of you.
Let's look at the CETA because it actually is hoping to stand on the shoulders of people like you. Trade can be measured in numbers and figures, but the relationship is purely driven by people, their ambition, the trust that they share. What does a mature UK-India partnership actually look like?
Co-creation, collaboration, genuine friendship, genuine respect for each other, equality on both sides. And I mean that genuinely because sometimes when you look at relationships, particularly we learn from the past. And I think that's what a mature relationship is. Actually, there was some bad stuff, a lot of bad stuff. But we're now in a place where India is a global power and the UK needs India. It's as simple as that. When I was having these meetings, the different places in India, they always deflect back to London. I said, no, we're not going to do that in London. We're going to move to, I said, pick any city north of Birmingham. I said, that's my territory. If you want it to be in Salford, if you want it to be in Sheffield or Leeds or Newcastle, and I have to show them the map. And you know what? We'll make it really easy for you. We'll do everything that you need because they think, oh, it's too far. It's just a mindset thing. And actually sharing culture.
What are the aspects of the CETA that excite you the most? What are you looking forward to?
We're quite lucky in the north where we've got really good sort of centres of excellence, whether it's around advanced manufacturing, if you look at Sheffield, whether it's around our data centres and our biosciences, whether you look at Leeds or whether you look at York, agri-tech, whether you look at York and you look, further north of England. So we're quite fortunate that all the different sectors that are covered in the Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement, they're covered. But for me, what's really exciting, I mean, obviously the textiles one, because the home of the north, we've got the Centre of Excellence for Textiles in the north. That's a really exciting one as well. But what I really love is that whole chapter around SMEs and that engagement with SMEs and then female entrepreneurship. I'm very excited, first time ever that you've actually got a segment that's dedicated to female entrepreneurship and championing women entrepreneurs and getting that co-creation.
What about the CETA you feel is still desirable? What aspects are not covered yet and what would you like it to cover?
I think the main sectors, when you look at industry, it's been covered really well, whether it's around digital tech or manufacturing, all those things. I think the key thing for me, what next? London's been trading with India for years. It's just continuing that message. It's not just an event. It's not just a signing. That's a start. That's a very tip of the iceberg. It's what happens next. So what we have to keep doing is celebrating the relationships, celebrating the wins. So when something does happen, we need to get some sort of PR around it. These deals are being done. This Indian company is investing in this. This UK companies, the north of England is doing that. We need to show that. York, they've just got their campus now in Mumbai. We need to see more of that co-creation, that co-branding, keep those conversations going and just make it happen. Don't stop. That's it.
There was a time when, people had started wondering if trade bodies had exhausted whatever they can do, because governments are now becoming proactive and doing what typically a trade body or trade organization would do. But I think with the CETA coming into force, the role of organizations like yourself, individuals like yourself, becomes even more important. It's now that there's a need for more and more champions of flying the flag for both the countries and showing each other what is out there. Is the value of opportunity that we're talking about in the corridor. So if we look at the north of England and we're looking at India, roughly what's kind of the size of business opportunity that we're looking at?
I always tell people in India, 20% may be rural, but that 30% is 330 million. With that 330 million across is the size of America. Look at the potential. Okay, the north of England, size-wise, geographically, it's a big base. There is a productivity challenge. A lot of those needs and those opportunities for the north of England could be met by India. And I think the great thing for the north is that when the Indian businesses goes to London, it's saturated and it's sort of like sit on the shelf with everybody else. If they come to the north of England, they will get a red carpet treatment and they will be given an opportunity, to find partners, if they need space, if they need access to talent, whatever resources they need for that mutually beneficial opportunity, that will happen. And I think that's the opportunity in the north of England, and that's what it gives. And I think what's really brilliant is our Prime Minister. He champions the north. He recognises that it shouldn't be an afterthought. It's not a nice to have. His idea of having a power base in the north of England.
So finally, I want to say that if you were sitting from here, 10 years from now, looking at everything that you've contributed, built, the legacy that you've left, what do you hope that people will say that which bridges have been achieved or built? What milestones have been achieved?
Well, I'm hoping in 5 years' time, even actually that the UK economy is boosting. We've got great transport infrastructure. We've got more flights going in and out of India. We've got more people coming here to visit. We've got more SMEs going out there. And actually, that co-creation, that collaboration, the sharing of cultures.
And we need more and more champions like yourself. That's why we at Global Order, we celebrate champions like yourselves, the stories, the perspectives, the work that you've done. I wish you all the very best, Sharon. It's been absolutely brilliant catching up with you after all these.
Thank you, Lakshmi. It's been a pleasure and wonderful seeing you, and see you in Leeds.
Thank you. This conversation reminds us that future of the UK-India relationship won't be shaped only by governments or large corporations. It will also be built by entrepreneurs, educators, regional leaders, communities, everyone willing to contribute across that border. Thank you for joining us on Common Ground. See you until next time. Keep watching, keep being interested, and keep learning. Thank you.